covering all your favorite parts of the 50-yard fight. This is the Inside the Walls podcast with Zach Kyleman and Jim Mernier.
Welcoming in fans of the 50-yard fight. This is the Inside the Walls podcast. Zach Kyleman in here, as always, for our latest episode 91 of the show. Wow, we're almost to the 3-digit mark on these shows. As I am coming in to you today to kick things off for a week out from the season start. We are going to be talking about predictions that we have for the 2023 NAL season, the whole shebang, standings, playoffs, our awards predictions with not only, of course, one of my co-hosts that I'm going to bring in right now with Jim Mernier coming onto the fold, but he hasn't been on in a bit. He's been on the recruiting trail as well. We're going to bring on, of course, an NAL MVP himself and third member of this show, Mason Espinosa himself, welcoming both of you on. Jim, good to see you as always. Glad to get another show in so quickly, by the way. And Mason, I'm going to just lead off with this. I mean, dude, you've been on the recruiting trail. We kind of chatted, of course, before show, but I mean, for the folks out there, how's the recruiting life for the DePaul OC himself?
It's good, man. It's good, man. It's been busy for the last couple of months for sure. We're really, really excited about our class we have coming in. We've hit Chicago really hard, hit Indianapolis really hard, like always, and kind of filled in from there to some other places. So we're really excited. We're rolling. We've been busy. We've been on the road, been in high school. So now spring ball starts here the next week, and we'll get rolling and ready for fall now.
All right. Well, I'm digging it here. Definitely going to be wishing the best for you. I know it's still got plenty of time left until your next season of this fall. But, I mean, hey, things are kicking off early. College football doesn't sleep. It only has small breaks in between.
Absolutely. You're dead on. Appreciate you.
And we're glad to have you on, too. You know, Jim, you and I have obviously spoke, 1 week away at this point. Really kind of be a little less once the show probably drops. So it's time to have all of us kind of just give our last final thoughts on kind of what we think might happen this year. Again, these are predictions. These are what we think will happen. The season, anything is, the rest is still unwritten, as one famous song once put. But we are going to put what we think might be written this year, all three of us. As we did at the beginning of the offseason with some of our other predictions, we'll kind of be visiting that right now. So, Jim, as you may know, we got to talk some standings. What do you think about standings, Jim? What are we looking at?
Standings are a thing we do that piss off the whole league because their team should be better, whatever. It's all crazy. But ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to right now, I'm having some technical difficulties. Don't know what's going on. Just know if I'm talking super fast, it's not me.
It just means, look, all this is he's really excited for the season, so he's speeding up how he talks. It's just how he is when he gets really kind of like giddy, because he knows that he's going to go watch Sharks football, not this first week. He's got a wedding to go to, but he'll go soon enough. He's a season ticket holder, for crying out loud. He's going to be there. He's ready for football.
Yes, I'm ready for football. I spent a couple days doing graphics, especially for our team here. So standings. One thing I love about standings is that this is where we think teams are going to finish. Also causes drama in the community, and we get called idiots, but yet they still come to our show and listen to us. So, how we're going to do? We're going to do standings, playoffs, what we think is going to championship. Then we go to individual awards. Not every single individual award. We're not doing executives and fan base, mascots. We're just doing players and teams.
Sure.
1 week out, we're technically, when we're recording this, for 6 days, and when this podcast is released, it'll be 3 days to kick off. So yeah.
Right. And we're also, I mean, that's all while we're putting this together too. Some of this is getting adjusted, I think, because, and Mason and us three brought it up together. Mason, you can touch on this. I mean, as you know, with any of these leagues, crucial camp cuts are going to be cutting down. We got to get those 25-man rosters here pretty soon, if not really just this week. Got to finalize who's going to be all available to shift out, rotate in, or start and be specialists by this Saturday.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely critical, with games starting this weekend. I mean, those cuts are obviously have, happen or mostly happen, and they're going to have some, probably final cuts here coming up soon, the last one or two. But like, it's an odd transition as a player this week because you've been in camp mode for so long. You've been in camp mode for a couple of weeks where you got guys trying to make the team and you're really worried about yourself. And then all of a sudden you show up for practice one day and there's half the people and, you're getting ready for an opponent and you're much less workload on your legs, much more game plan and that type of stuff. So it is important. Those cuts are important because, at the end of the day, no matter how many you bring in, you only have those, 25 there in the locker room, and you got to start bonding and gelling and knowing it's going to be in for the long haul. So it's a fun time. It's a nervous time. All that nervous energy is kind of out at this point, and you're just ready to get on the field and play some football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, get on the field and at least also get that first week underway, because I feel like part of what happens with any football league is you have a little bit nervous jitters, I think, even if you are a seasoned vet, just to get started and get back out there, get in the flow. But also, say for newer coaches in this league, say like a Herky Walls, or, say like, of course, a Coach Gunnings who's coming back into the fray now in the NAL, or even like, Coach Smith over in West Texas, who's now with a, new to the NAL. He still is a veteran coach, but seeing how these systems work, especially with arena football being back, and that different, maybe a slightly different setup, or just being your first time back in a while, like Herky Walls, getting your guys in the same page as soon as possible. Week one is kind of that first testing rounds to see if all the training camp items stuck.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, it's hard. There's some, every organization, depending on their arenas and stuff, they have different pros and cons. Like, I remember thinking one of the biggest positives that we had in Columbus was the Civic Center wasn't that busy this time of year, and we could actually go physically in and practice in the arena 3 or 4 times before we played our first game. There's going to be teams, I guarantee, and it's typically the bigger teams, the teams that their arenas are full all year long. I wouldn't be surprised if Jacksonville, I wouldn't be surprised if Carolina, maybe with all the basketball going on, literally their first time in their arena will be on game day. So that's hard on coaches. It's also really hard on rookies, right? Guys that, you can measure out a field outside all day. It's just not the same till the wall's there. It just feels so much smaller and confined. So I know that was probably one of the biggest keys, in my opinion, to our success in Albany, that last year in the AFL, was that we practiced every single day in the arena on our field, and we got used to the walls. And I think that's why you saw a lot of rookie contributions on that team, because they were veterans by the end of the year, where some teams, they couldn't use their arena all year.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit of a tangent, but I might as well ask while we're at it. And I think we may have touched on this before, but since it's the beginning of the year, and I think some people, maybe they're getting new into this sport, Mason, I guess for a player, you obviously joined up with the AFL more so, but describe like a rookie season in an arena indoor league. Obviously quarterback, you got to adjust a few things, but I think overall you're adjusting to a different landscape as a player coming into something that's familiar but still very much different.
It's chaos for sure, because there's two step ups. For one, typically when you're a rookie, some people have had experience playing in the National Football League or the Canadian Football League or whatever it is, and have already taken that professional step up, right? A vast majority of us, myself included, got cut, in camp, either the NFL or the CFL. So we had never played a professional game at full speed. So not only are you taking a college game and cranking it up because it's faster, but you're also confining yourself into what's 23% of an actual field. And you're playing a new game with new rules. Like, I remember, having to literally, I'm like week 4 or week 5 of my rookie season, I'm still learning rules. Like, something will happen once a game and I'll be like, what was that? They're like, oh, it's this rule. Credit Rob Keefe. I know he's, out west, but that was one thing in Albany that I thought he did incredibly well was, we play on Saturday night, we give a Sunday off, and we come back Monday. And before we broke apart and watched film as position groups, he would always have a playlist of weird things that happened in the league that weekend. And he would show us and explain the rule of why. And so we felt at the end of the year that we were all much more prepared on the rules than everyone else at the end of the year, because we were seeing weird, kooky rules that happened. It's just different. It's hard. And so you're learning that as a rookie, and it's chaos. I'll just be honest with you. It's chaos. It's hard. You're probably in a new city for the first time, probably meeting a bunch of guys for the first time, but it's incredibly special, and you're hooked. I know that.
I can only imagine getting used to it as a person on the field with some of the things. I mean, seriously, if you're a linebacker, that probably that's one I could imagine. Being sure that you're knowing being sure which if you are a Mac or a Jack and getting that down your number one priority in training camp. Because as you start seeing a few out of the box penalties, or you do an incorrect twist, then you're gonna be like, yeah, I'm pulling you. I'm sorry, but you're costing me yards.
It is. It's like it's. I thought about this before. It's like playing baseball your entire life, and then all of a sudden you're going to go play professional fast pitch softball. It's like generally it's the same thing, but not really. Like it's almost a different sport, even though they're very, very similar. You know what I mean?
I see what you're saying.
It's different rules, different strategies, but it's more or less the same thing.
Jim, I think here's a good thing. I know I'm on a tangent. We will get to predictions, but might as well while we're talking new season. And again, new people, new players, new fans too. Jim, if you're a new fan of this league, say you're watching some old replays, you're jumping onto our show for the first time, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go to my first game this year. I bought a ticket. To go to the ViStar Memorial, Coliseum. I'm going to go watch a Sharks game. What do I expect as a fan? What should I know as a fan? Of course, if you're on the sideline, I'm just going to say it right away. You should know about the football coming into the stands and maybe a player. But what else should you be expecting your first experience at a game?
Loud music.
Fair enough.
All the time. In Jacksonville, that strange horn that they always play. It's annoying. I think Mason agrees with it.
Mason knows. You can tell he's already I remember that.
PTSD, man.
There's a couple things in the arena that the fans that don't pay attention, they're on their phones and they get hit by a football, and they act like they got knocked out. I'm like, well, it's a football, walk it off. Of course, you're going to enjoy the action, but if you're going to your first game, there's a term that I can't stand. It's like you can keep the ball, but not the player. Like, are we keeping players now? Is that illegal now? But if you're going to your first game, matter of fact, as I actually got graphics for this crap, so I don't even want to say. First game start this week, especially in San Antonio, where the Carolina Cobras are traveling to the San Antonio Gunslingers. The Sharks are traveling to the Warbirds, and the Fayetteville Mustangs are traveling to the Orlando Predators for Week 1 action in the National Arena League. So if you're going to go follow this sport, go to your local website, your local teams, and contact your ticket provider. Get tickets. It's pretty fun, cheap entertainment. You can bring a family of 4, and I don't think you're touching $100 for tickets, unless you're some people in our league. We're like Josh over in Columbus, trying to sell the sweet seats. If you, that can't, $100 won't get you a family of 4 on the sweet seats. Just FYI. Anywhere, any
the closer to the sweet seats are closer to the floor, midfield, for the most part, or the party zones in the end zone. So just for new fans out there too. Some of you that are seasoned, you're like, yeah, I get it. But hey, maybe you want to spread it to, spread this episode to your buddies. Get this clip, show them that if they're coming to a game, it's a good option. But, trying to grow the game, new people are checking things out. Why not tune in and get a little bit of expertise on knowing what you might expect of the game? And now you'll get some expertise on what we think will happen this season. As we have said, this is a prediction show. Let's get this bad boy started. First off, with what we think our standings are going to be. This is not a power ranking. This is what we feel like it's going to be the final season standings. We don't have any records, just going to be ranking 1 to 7 in terms of where they're going to sit. Remember, top 4 in the NAL get in for playoffs. So this is our predictions also for who we think the playoff teams are in the NAL. As you can see, kind of similar variables. There's actually only difference really that between this entire list is actually kind of the Preds and the Cobras. And I think, Jim, you and I can say this for sure, as we've talked on this show, that the muck is a real thing, and it's kind of was going to be hard, I think, to pick the 2 that weren't San Antonio or Albany in this instance. And that's already being present between our 3 different selections for the top 4.
Well, we previewed the season. We both said that Albany and San Antonio have the better rosters at this point, especially with the addition of Arlo Ness and San Antonio. But yeah, the muck, I think, is going to be a mixture between Orlando, Jacksonville, and Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And Mason thinks San Antonio's going to be part of the buck. So, again, they're at number 4. But one thing I like about all 3 of our playoff predictions of this season is that we have different teams in the postseason. Like Mason has Carolina in. Me and you basically have similar teams in different positions. But we all agree on West Texas and Fayetteville. Maybe this is because of the experience of these players that we don't know about. They do have quality players, but do they have enough to sustain a 17-week season, 14-game season?
Mm-hmm.
Get in the top 4? Probably not. But yes, me and you both like Albany, and you'll have a lot of people look at Mason and go, "Oh, Jacksonville. I wonder why he picked Jacksonville." Maybe it's because it's Gibson, and you're going to have a lot of people from Albany say,
"How dare you!"
But yeah, for
Look,
me, if you're looking,
I'm gonna go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you're looking on the pocket, listen to the podcast version, Zach has Albany, San Antonio, Orlando, Jacksonville is his top 4. I have Albany, San Antonio, Jacksonville, Orlando. Mason has Jacksonville, Albany, Carolina, and San Antonio. So it's a mix of beans. So yeah, Mason, what do you?
I'm going to defend myself for a little bit here. Just to repeat there: Jacksonville, Albany, Carolina, San Antonio. They're my rankings. I can do whatever the heck I want. How about that? I'm a homer.
Yeah.
I don't care. I have ties to Jacksonville now. You're going to see me wearing Sharks red this year. They're going number 1. All right.
You just made the list.
You can tell he these clips, man. It just adds. I love this stuff. Yeah, look, I do think that. I think there's a very much a argument for Carolina. That's the big one. For Jacksonville, I think that is, I think that's kind of the good situation where we're seeing it here between us 3. I think depending on the crew that Gibson has brought in and just how good that defense is, which Jim has very much said this is arguably the best defense he's seen in Jacksonville in a good while. You can either see them be. I think the floor to me is that they'll be a 4th seed playoff team, where I think Mason's and mine and Jim's is that they can definitely be pushing up there to be one of the top 2. It just really depends on, how good of a crew of guys you're seeing. And of course, how well can you see the Jacksonville Sharks slow down other opponents? That'll come in crucial for guys like an Albany or San Antonio that are high-powered offenses and have been high-powered offenses, at least as of the last half of last season for San Antonio, and especially the last few years for the Albany Empire.
There are 3 things that are common in the human life: death, taxes, and Jason Gibson making the playoffs. He hasn't missed. Look at his history. He hasn't missed playoffs, so he's guaranteed the top 4 in the league.
Well, the thing is, they have such a good defense. Like, I'm looking down their roster, and they got a good defense, dude. And it's at the end of the day, it's still football. Like, defense wins football games. Like, they'll take you far places. To me, the crucial part of their season is actually the early part. Like, they have to stay afloat. They have to find creative ways to win games until they can establish the quarterback position with what they're going to do. If they can find what they're going to do at the quarterback position, whether it's, this rookie stepping up or whatever, or just, letting Gibson, whatever it is, they just got to survive till midseason. And then once they get their quarterback situation figured out, you're going to see that thing click. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be really good because that defense is going to be constant. It's going to be consistent, and they're just going to be a constant threat week in, week out. They just are. That's the good thing about having a good defense. If you have a good offense, you can have an off week. It's like having a good basketball team that shoots 3-pointers. If you have a good defense, they're going to show up every week. Very rarely will you see a defense have an off week, and that's where I think that consistency comes in for them, in my opinion.
Right. And you know what, Jacksonville, like I said, theirs is fascinating. As I'm not surprised, you have Gibson building defensively once again, and his whole philosophy, as we've always heard, and when we talk to him, it's about, he likes finding the guys in the rough that he can kind of mold into his own image as well. And so, Jim's known about this one recent signing for a while, but Connor Blau, as it is from Oregon State, that's been one that I think has been, and Jim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Gibson's had an eye on him for a minute to where, that's going to be kind of their guy to go to. And, we're going to see how good that kid is, or who's on this roster. There might be another QB coming in. If someone told me possibly another arena experienced quarterback might be here, but to be determined. I'm not 100% sure if that's fully conveyed right or not. But nonetheless, Blau's going to be possibly your guy going in. And you have Darian Townsend. You got veteran receivers on the outside to throw to. There are options. It's just going to be coming down to how well can you adapt to that game right out of the gate, as we always talk about, and especially as Mason knows, how much can you get up to speed and be able to adjust to those angles, that size, that quick timing, being sure that you're always getting the ball out efficiently and not waiting on your line. Those elements will be coming into play. But that defense definitely is an imposing force, and I think that's what helps a lot with our floor and ceiling predictions with Jacksonville. Curious, here's the one that I want to kind of talk with us three, the differentiation on this. The Predators conundrum or the Carolina Cobras conundrum. That's the only one I think that we're really split on. I know most of us have West Texas and Fayetteville kind of lower to the bottom. I will say that's, for me personally, it's marginal between 4 through 7 on this list. I just think it's going to be a very competitive year, which played actually a little bit into the Cobras decision, because I do have, like I said, I think there will be some questions as to, McCollum's great, but I think how much will he be up to speed where we'll see the MVP McCollum? And then I also think, I love the Preds specialty group and their defense. That's where I'm holding tight, but it makes it hard for me with Carolina. Carolina is the one I think we differentiate the most on right now.
Yeah, I know, at least for me, here's my thing. And obviously this is preseason, guys. Obviously, I'm biased on a lot of this stuff. I know a lot of people on each team, and I have friends, and especially obviously with the Sharks, for obvious reasons. But when I'm really looking at stuff, a couple things I look for sure. It's about your quarterback and it's about your middleman. It just is, right? And a lot of arena football is that, right? And I know the Predators have, Josh Jenkins. I think that kid's an absolute stud, and he's going to be as good as he wants to be for a long time. I know they have some pieces. I know Lonnie, Quavon, and all that. But, what does that quarterback situation look like versus Charles McCollum, right? And, say what you want about McCollum. He's been around the country to different organizations and been with Billy Back for a long time. And I know this will be one of the times he's not, but that dude's a freaking player, man. Like, he's played a lot of arena football, a lot of snaps, and it's just hard for me to imagine, a Charles McCollum team missing the playoffs. Just, he's seen so much, and he's played in all these arenas, and he's going to come in ready to play from week one. I think Carolina's a team you might be able to see come out of the gates a little bit early on fire, in my opinion.
One of the main advantages to me, Jim, I'm curious what yours is between Carolina and Orlando. I think Carolina, if I had to switch it, like say if I wanted to switch Carolina or Orlando, because I think Jacksonville, no matter what, I think I am keeping Jacksonville in. Maybe I switch them up depending on who I were to pick between Orlando and Carolina. But to me, if I had an argument to switch out Orlando for Carolina, that QB room actually is part of it, because not only McCollum, but Malik Henry, who was there last year with James Fuller, who was successful in helping the Carolina Cobras stay afloat to get into the playoffs, to keep that second seed alive. That to me is what's crucial, I think, as well, because I know my part argument is about McCollum possibly staying healthy, but even in that being the case, Henry took a lot of good strides at the end of last year that us three saw, that really gives me confidence that they have a well-developed QB room in terms of an arena QB room.
Mm-hmm.
I agree, but the reason why I have Orlando in my top 4 is I believe that there's going to be a quarterback there that's not there right now, and once he gets to Orlando, I think Orlando's going to be that team that's going to struggle earlier in the year and just dominate in the second half, because when a certain team decides to trade somebody, and I think he'll go to Orlando. That's the only reason why. But we've said before in the Orlando preview and earlier in the show, a couple weeks ago, Orlando has an elite roster. They're one quarterback away from being the elite roster.
I do wonder too. I think that that, like I said, that there's a big looming QB out there that many of you already know. We're not going to say it right out of the gate because they're going to let them figure that out themselves. But there is one in the fray right now. It's Mason.
Not with these knees, man. Not with these knees. No, sir. They're peanut brittle at this point.
I think Jim's sole goal is just to try and find a way to get Mason to be like, all right, one more go at it. Cracks knee 1, cracks knee 2.
Oh,
that's good enough.
One throw in a Sharks. If I ever throw one pass in a Sharks jersey, you have to get an Espinosa Sharks jersey, Jim.
Facts. That's facts, man.
That's not. Well, don't hold your breath.
Nice.
I may pass out for lack of oxygen.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Oh, God. Gentlemen, any more thoughts on the predictions for standings? I will say one thing with Fayetteville, just for some of those Fayetteville folks out there. You did get a really good linebacker in recent transactions in James Summers. So, keep that in mind. You are going to get another quality veteran player there. A lot of this stuff with new teams, we did this last year at San Antonio. Gunslingers fans will know. New roster, new stuff. Yes, Kerry Starks is over in West Texas, but we need to see the rest. Daniel Smith's over there, but, we need to see the rest. It's about seeing the rest of these guys that are brand new to this level. So some of that plays into it. But trust me, if you've heard any of these episodes of the show, ranks for standings 4 through 7 in our eyes is maybe even 3 through 7 is kind of like just a wide open who knows what for us. Otherwise, we only have 2 teams we think will guarantee to make the playoffs, maybe 3. I think Jacksonville might have made that list today. But Albany and San Antonio, we feel, are almost complete locks to be there unless there's catastrophic failure at certain positions this year.
Agreed. I have nothing against that. So, yeah.
Yeah, fair.
One thing that I've said before, the muck's the muck, and the muck is going to entertain us until the very end.
Mm-hmm. That's what makes the league good. Like I said, you want to see games that are competitive through and through. Even if it's a 7th-ranked team, you hope that it's a good fight every week. And I think you have rosters in this league that will put up those good fights every week to where you'll want to still tune in for that football game or go visit. Hey, Preds fans enjoyed their season last year, even though it wasn't ideal. Those people came out and showed out because why? It was entertaining football. They still put up a good fight almost week in and week out. Just need to finish games this year. That's going to be crucial for Herky Wall's first season here back in his old stomping grounds with the Predators as well. Well, got predictions for standings down. Let's look at the playoff matchups. So if you've seen what we've got, we'll kind of compile some of this together. A few of us have different playoff brackets, of course, but that's okay. We have all 3 of them covered for you. So don't worry. We're going to show this bad boy off. Let's kick off with Mason's here, since he's the differentiator with the Cobras. As you can see, he's going to have the championship game come down to Jacksonville and Albany. Jacksonville takes the crown. He's got Gibson running towards his first NAL championship, this time as a Shark. Blasphemy, I say, to anyone that has seen Gibson in years. That will be quite the sight. Not because it's, Gibson's not a good coach, but more because of the fact that just as a Shark, I think that's what is the kicker for me. Winning as a Shark, you know what I'm saying? So it just feels a little off right now, but maybe it's different later on.
That's it. I'm leading with my heart here. I'll be honest with you. I understand that I'm incredibly biased in this, but that's okay because they're my predictions. Mm-hmm. I never thought there'd be the day where I wanted to see a Jacksonville Shark championship game here, but today's the day. So let's go Jacksonville. I think these are, the 4 teams. I think they're going to be, kind of the ones that pull themselves through, minus any, like Jim said, these seasons shift on a dime, especially with quarterback play when different quarterbacks go different places. But as of right now, as you're looking at it, I think these are the best 4 teams. And why the heck wouldn't I, in my own little fantasy world, have Jacksonville winning the championship for Jason Gibson? Why not? Come on, Gibby. Let's figure this thing out, man.
Oh, dude, without a doubt. I was just more highlighting how it'd be weird as, former Lions coach, that rivalry existing for so long. And then you're seeing him coming as in a Shark, which is still, I think to some folks that were out there when they saw that happen, is still kind of insane. But, that would be wild in his first year. I'll ask this for each one of us. And Mason, I'm curious for yourself. Out of this list of your 4, say you were going say your underdogs are San Antonio and Carolina. Who is the more likely team in this playoff scenario to have the upset? if you don't go with
If
your
this
ideal favorites here.
If this was the playoff scenario, I do think the more likely upset would probably be Carolina right now. I know that's different probably than your guys' opinion. I know you guys think really highly of the gunslinger roster, and so do I. I just know that, you know, based upon looking at the transaction, there looks like there's to be a little bit of quarterback issue going on there for whatever reason or whatever that looks like. You know, with Arvell and Bain and the whole thing. I don't know what's going on there. I don't have the inside scoop like I once did, but I just know that that's hard this close to a season to have multiple big name quarterbacks on your transaction report one way or another. And I'm just going to go back to the experience of Charles McCollum and as exactly like you said, Malik Henry too. I mean, you know, for whatever reason, McCollum isn't able to make it through the season. I saw firsthand what Malik can do. I don't know if you remember, that was one of the games I played in last year. We got a big map, and he brought him all the way back, and it took a 2-point conversion at the end there for us to pull that out. And he's going to be a good player in this league for a long time as long as he wants to be. So I think between that, I think, you know, probably Carolina just because the experience of Fuller and McCollum, quite honestly.
That is a good point. I completely spaced on the fact that game happened last year. That was a wild finish.
It was nuts, man.
For sure.
Absolutely crazy.
I mean, hang on for dear life, too, by the way.
Yeah, by fingertips. Darian Townsend's fingertips. That's what we hung on by. That catch, that was one of the best catches I've ever seen in my life. I don't know if you guys are able to see that. We had a tight end zone view of it. It's one of the best catches I've ever seen in my life. It was unbelievable how he got up and hung and brought it down. And it was nuts, man.
That one I do remember out of the several from his rookie year. Still can't believe that was his rookie year last season. He's got so much ahead of him if he's staying arena or if he goes beyond too, you know. Yeah. Without a doubt. Jim, absolutely. Let's go to you next here. So you and I, same participants, different rankings. So this one's a little different. Same championship game, different venue though. Mason's got the Sharks hosting. You've got the Empire hosting, with Albany taking the crown once again at the MVP Arena. Kind of go through your process here with the playoffs here.
Oh, of course. And how I did my playoffs is come at the king, better not miss. So Albany's at 1. I think Orlando has that second half that gets them in as a 4 seed. In fact, they'll be the 4 seed you don't want to play in the playoffs. And I think just the experience from a Jacksonville team getting into the playoffs with Gibson, they go on the road and they knock off San Antonio in the first round.
Ooh, that's right. I do see on your bracket as, again, just for those referencing here. So he has Empire 1, Predators 4, Gunslingers 2, Sharks 3. So yeah, he's got the Sharks being the Road Warriors here in the semifinals and then heading over to Albany. But again, as he's putting, if you aim for the king, you can't miss. I think right now as we've seen, we're in like a prove me wrong type of setup anymore with a Tom Manas-led organization. I'll tell you though, Jason Gibson though, it's like a tale as old as time right now in the recent years is Gibson versus Manas. That would still be, as both of you put, an excellent football game through and through. They are diehard competitors, and as Manas put in our last show, they definitely look at these games and mark them on the map or on their schedules at this point, since these two have been in the league.
This would also be their 4th matchup of the season because Albany and Jacksonville play each other 3 times.
Right.
That too. The 4th matchup. So yeah.
That'd be wild. Those will be crucial games. Those will be must-watch arena games if you're going to be tuning in. Either venue, you're going to be seeing that in. For Jim, I got to ask you, who is your? I know I made you jump the gun on that. That's on me. If you're watching on YouTube, you're like, oh, wait a minute. No, Jim. Same thing for Mason here. If you're looking at your bracket, who is a more likely upset in the? Well, actually, you know what? That doesn't even fit. You already picked an upset. You picked Jacksonville. I can't even say that because there's only one other one you'd pick. So forgive me. You already were ahead on your homework. You get extra credit. Clearly, you already knew it was coming.
Well, Gibson has made the championship game, and especially NAL, 4 out of the 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's in Jacksonville, so I'm just going by the betting favorite. Who's going to make a championship game? That's the reason why I got Jacksonville there.
I like those odds. Can't say you're wrong.
Tell me
so, yeah, he already picked the road warrior. I'm going to call that as the underdog anyway. You know, it's kind of hard to win on the road in arena. It's just the thing. Large crowds, large noise, everything like that. Aggressive audiences. Let's see. I'm going to take a look at mine now. Now you can slide this up here. So again, kind of same as with me and Jim here. Same participants, different rank. So as you can see with mine, I've got Jacksonville meeting up with Albany way early. And that's going to be fascinating. I have the Empire moving on to win over the Gunslingers. I've been touting that up as my matchup for a few weeks now. I will say, though, if I'm looking at these matchups, I think this one, either one of these matchups, I think you could see an upset. And here's my thinking. I'm actually really bullish on the Orlando Predators. Besides Josh Jenkins, I love Brandon Fuentes. He's going to be healthy this year. My hope is that Lonnie Outlaw takes a step as a Jack linebacker this season and is even better in coverage than he was last year. And I hope Jack Sheehan, who came over from the Blizzard in the IFL, keeps to produce the same numbers he had or similar and is able to find Lonnie Outlaw a lot more, as well as Jared Dangerfield. So I actually think if I had to pick between the two, I think the more likely upset would actually be over the Gunslingers, to where you maybe see the Preds play over in the MVP arena. I still think, much like Jim, it's going to be hard for me to not pick the Empire at this point, because it's just, they continuously build these rosters that seemingly just have endless talent that you have to stop on every facet of the game. And defensively, they find new pieces to go with some of the old vets that are hardcore guys like a Brandon Cisse, like a Nick Hague that can dominate as well. I also like Joseph Putu, but I digress. I think this, to me, is one of the more wide open NAL seasons I've watched. So I could see any one of these four, or any one of these combinations of 16 different matchups, as I would put it. Four teams, or actually 8 different matchups, my apologies, that you have 2 teams out of the 4 you have to pick. So wide open. That's what I've got. My upset, though, it's got to be Predators. I like the Preds. Pretty high on the Preds. I just like what they got. It's just me.
Sometimes you got to be high on somebody. Why not Orlando? They have the skill, they have players, but in my opinion, they're just a quarterback away of being elite. Unless Jack Sheehan is that dude, which he was in Green Bay last year, most of the year, so maybe translates. But yeah, all of our playoffs are unique. It's one thing about the NAL. You can have a bad season 99% through the year when the last 3 or 4 games are in the playoffs. Because 500 gets you in.
Mm-hmm.
Some years below 500 gets you in. Look at Carolina a couple years ago.
I mean, look, if you have teams beat up on each other, you have to have someone go in eventually. So that very much is a possibility. 500 is usually what you expect to get in, but Jim, you're absolutely right. That could change. Carolina a few years ago, they rallied the troops and they got in on a sub 500 record, and at least for a little while against the Empire, made it a game. Just all depends on how the season goes.
But I think the next couple of things we'll be talking about, it's going to really stir some controversy around the league, especially among the players.
Right.
Position rewards. So
yes. Here we go.
We got Mr. MVP in our stream, so we got a couple MVPs. So let's start with our prediction for this year's MVP. Me and Mason got Darius Prince and Zach Castronova.
Yes.
Why Castronova?
Well, look, Darius Prince, I think, definitely deserved his MVP last year. I just think that, to me, I thought, as I see Castron Kova on the graphic, I'm sorry, I had to stop for a second.
Yes.
Anyway, no, look.
I just saw that too.
I'm just saying, I had to stop. I saw that, wait a minute, what's going on? No, look, I thought Sam last year.
I can fix that.
I thought Sam last year, my expectations were not at all there, and he kind of blew me away at how well he played. And not just because standard QB play and he has Darius Prince and these weapons, but also the escapability, the run capability he showed off. I love the elusiveness. You generally don't want to, at least my analysis, and Mason, you can stop me if I'm dead wrong, but you generally don't want to buy yourself too much time in the game because, the shorter field, you don't have as much escapability. But for some reason, I thought Sam did an excellent job of being an improvisational QB, just beyond what I was expecting. I think he takes that next step this year, and I think that you're going to see voters, in terms of league officials, league people like us that get to put a vote in. I think he'll get a little more credit this year is the deal. I think Prince will still be an award winner, as you'll see later in this pick. I just think it'll go to a quarterback again, and I think Sam will be that guy who will take that next step. Prince deserved it last year. I thought there was a very good case for it, but I definitely will not shy away from saying I did put a vote in for Sam Castronova as MVP last season. And if he plays like he did last year, I might be doing that again.
Yeah, Zach, I mean, for sure, I think Castronova had an unbelievable season last year. He could be very, very easily be deserving of this award at the end of the year. 100%. I think credit to him. You know, we talked a little about Arena earlier and kind of how it's different. I really, really believe in my heart it takes for quarterbacks, at least a vast majority of us, you have to have game experience with someone who's willing to grow with you for at least a year, if not a year and a half. And then you kind of see the light bulb kind of go off and you get it. And once you get it, you don't forget it. And if you look at his timeline, that's very, very similar to that timeline, right? He had, I know, early on he was with Carolina. It didn't go so well, but he got a lot of reps. I know, and then Albany comes into fray and all this stuff. And it just seemed like the light bulb just kind of turned on, and that's what happens. Like you see so many talented quarterbacks, unfortunately, get out of the league or the Arena League early because it feels hard and feels fast. It just takes a minute. And if you have someone that's willing to grow with you, you're going to see that pay off. And I think that's what he's stepping into. And I can 100% see him being in that realm this year for sure. I don't think that's a bad pick at all.
Yeah, and again, I don't think Prince is a bad pick either. I mean, there's not much more to say about Darius Prince at this point. Dude is basically, he was excellent receiver in the AFL back in the day. He took that and did the exact same thing in his seasons in the NAL so far. And last year, for a time, he was playing solid Ironman ball. They just, kind of what we figured out is that they wanted to make him specialist because they felt they didn't want to tire him out. And he understood that and he kept dominating even farther. So that's a complete understatement. This man has been dominating the league now for 3 straight years at the receiving position, and no one really has found a solution. And if they do, then generally what happens is the Empire just find a secondary guy like a Markel Wade, like a Dwayne Hollis, which that guy, he came out of nowhere last year. So his imposing force alone makes that offense just move whether he's covered or not. So I very much have him as one of my probably an honorable mention, and that seems a little bit of an insult, but in terms of second runner-up or third vote, he's definitely right there. I could definitely switch my vote if he has a season that somehow if it matches or even somehow exceeds last year. I could probably throw my hat in the ring and go, yeah, Darius probably did that for me too.
Yeah, for sure. To me, he's an absolute game changer because just the way the Arena rules are set up, it's so hard to double team somebody. And if you do, right, and if you get not necessarily creative, but if you find a way to play some zone and drop a backside corner off or double, with some people, whatever it looks like, a good quarterback is going to pick it apart because he knows the weaknesses of it. At the end of the day, the most solid defense in Arena football is man coverage, and he eats up man coverage. And so if you have to play some zone, then you got to do like Castronova, who's able to see it and pick it apart. So to me, he's the biggest game changer out there, at least offensively. And offensive players typically win this award for whatever reason. So that's just where my mind immediately went, and he's proven it every stage he's ever been on in his Arena football career. He's proven it. So how could you not?
Something I do want to point out that impressed me last year was as I've gotten more and more accustomed to watching Arena on a regular pace, as I've become more and more of a fan over my short fandom compared to you two. Last season, he impressed me by the fact that, his understanding of the NAL, of the Arena rules helps him a lot too. Not in all situations. He's great at catching the ball. He's great at doing everything. But there were some TDs where he just understood the ball was on the top of the wall. And he the defender didn't know what to do. And he just touchdown him. And you're sitting there going, is that legal? And they're like, no, that's legal. He understood the rule. And it's that excels his game. As Chris Siegfried has said on this show before, he wants good Arena players. That's a good Arena player move to have. You understand that rule. You can do so much with understanding the wall rules like that as a receiver. and he at least got 3 touchdowns last year I can recall, where it's like it bounces off the wall and he rebounds it, or like it just was on that top shelf and he's like, hey, it's a touchdown.
Yeah.
Like it was there, just hungry
Absolutely.
for that and understanding of that game.
Yeah, you're dead on. You're dead on.
Also, I think he's a top 3 player, probably the best player in the league right now, or the last 2 years. Like
Football player.
Yeah, very good.
He-
not much more you could say is good football player because he is that just good.
Good football.
when Albany needs someone to come out and make plays, he's the one that does. Yeah, Markel Quaid did last year, Dwayne Hollis did last year, and you had Nick Hag and the defensive players. But when they needed offensive explosion, it was Darius Prince. He's the one that came out and took over the team. Even though how Catherine had the season last year, it was Darius Prince that was always at the receiving end of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we did we did one MVP. I'm labeling Iron Man as kind of like MVP part 2 because if you can do it all and excel at an all NAL level on both sides of the ball, honestly, you're probably going to land with this award. And look, here I am again having to defend myself. Obviously, I'm gonna let you two this time talk more about Zach Brown because there's also another what's more to say. Dude is a great 2-way player, and he was also in the Ironman running last year, right behind his colleague DJ Myers, who, as I've been watching videos online, he's balling out right now in training camp for the Showboats. He might be a surprise pop-up to help the NAL name. But what can we say about Zach Brown, gentlemen?
So I'm going to go here. Let me jump in real quick, Jim, because here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give a little talk a little Zach Brown, and I'm going to go on about a 2-minute soliloquy because I got a meeting here I got to run to, and so I'm going to go through just briefly all my picks so I can at least explain myself, so I can defend myself online how that's going to go. Zach Brown, I'm right. Zach Brown, what can you say about this dude? He's been playing for a long time, and he knows exactly what you're talking about, that prototypical arena player. What I saw him do last year, I know I've said it on the show before, he played every snap of the football game, offense, defense, special teams. To me, if that ain't an Ironman, I don't know what is. And he made an impact every way. He had like 2 touchdowns. He had a sack. That's as Ironman gets to do that for sure. So that's my early pick. Offensive player of the year, I'm going with my boy. Might be my surprise, but kind of surprise out there. Give me Darian Townsend. My man is a stud. I'm telling you guys. We saw it 2 years ago in camp. We saw it last year. He's going to figure out a way, man. This dude is too good. You can't guard him one-on-one. It's the same thing as Prince. He's a man coverage killer. You cannot guard him in man coverage. And I think he's going to get more man coverage than Prince, maybe because Prince has a few more years of name and experience, where I think teams might challenge Darius in one-on-one or Darian in one-on-one situations. I think he's going to eat it up. My defensive player of the year is kind of my defensive version of Darius Prince. It's Marvin Ross, dude. Marvin's a freaking stud. You're only as good, in my opinion, as your middleman. I think the 2 most important positions in arena football are your quarterback and your middleman. I think Marvin is an exceptional talent, and I think he's proven that every step of the way that he is the best middleman in the league and the best DB in the league. And his mentality is unique to arena. He doesn't care if he gives up a touchdown. He doesn't care if he gives up 2 touchdowns. Because you know why? In arena, they're supposed to score touchdowns. He lives for the interception, right? So he'll give up 3 touchdowns, and he'll make a game-changing interception. It's like, well, guess what? We're supposed to score touchdowns. We're not supposed to have interceptions, and he just changed the game because it's Marvin. My special teams player of the year, Khalil Rashad, right? I think the return game is going to be absolutely, absolutely critical this year with the rebound nets, especially with the new rules, adding a point if you kick it out of bounds, which I think was a great, great change. I think this dude is a problem carrying the ball in space, and the rebound nets are a big deal, right? And that's become somewhat of an equalizer, and it's going to be, and I think he's gonna really excel. Lastly, but not least by any means, how could I not? Are you kidding me? Coach of the year, I have to go Jason Gibson. I have no choice in the matter. You're my man, Gibson. Take it home. Bring it home for us. All these Sharks fans out here. Let's get it going.
I love it. And Gibson, we know listens to this show, so he's going to love hearing that too. Might be getting a text from him probably later today or later when this show drops, my guess.
Absolutely. Guys, I appreciate it. I got to run. I appreciate you having me on again. Can't wait to do this again soon and talk some football, man. I can't wait. It's here.
Good to have you on as always, Mason. Thanks for jumping on. Glad you got to at least get your picks out before you have to go to a meeting.
I couldn't live with myself just to throw names out there and not give reasoning. Right, I had to do it.
Thanks, man. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Mason Espinosa, NAL MVP quarterback, and of course, pick extraordinaire for choices. Jim, I'm going to let you reintroduce into the Iron Man here. And now that Mason has stepped away, we got all his explanations, and we'll react off those. For those listening, well, he stepped off the video. If you are watching the video, well, you've seen that. And if you want to subscribe, click that bell, builds morale, and hit that big red button if you're watching right now, or if you're listening, want to check the video version out. Because some stuff you miss, like the graphics we have up here. Jim does a great job with these, by the way. Works really hard on that. I cannot say that enough for some of the stuff he throws up onto the show. It looks incredible. So, definitely great to support that if you can. All right, Jim, you obviously know enough about Zach Brown as a fan, and we have watched enough of Zach Brown from last season. What else can you add to him? Because I definitely, much like Darius Prince with our conversation this last one, I know I'm kind of the odd man out, and I'll explain my section, but he's very much still in my top 3 candidates to hit this award for this season.
Well, of course. The two guys that we have on the screen, especially with Mason, Zach Brown, Kendrick Ing, yours is Kendrick. Darius Prince is in that conversation. There's a couple of guys out there like Alani Outlaws in the conversation, but the guy who finished second last year in the Ironman vote was Zach Brown. And like what Mason said, he played every single down. I think from the conversation I had with Zach, he said he would maybe miss a handful of snaps all season. If that's not telling you an Ironman is, I don't know who you think an Ironman. And plus, he was in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year last year as well. So his ability as a player is extraordinary, especially for the caliber of player he is. He did it in Jacksonville. He's doing it in the Carolina, and he also did it with the Firebirds in Albany, Georgia, from the Georgia Firebirds with the NAL first debut. So he's consistently been a workhorse, a dog, like the go-to dude. That's Zach Brown. The reason why I have him as Ironman, I just think that he single-handedly may carry Carolina to the playoffs if they become a playoff team. Because you mentioned before in the previous episode that you think McCollum, yes, he has experience, but you think Malik Henry is going to play a lot of downs. So you usually go to your most experienced individual, and your most experienced individual on your team is a guy like Zach Brown. And I think he gets in. Now, does that discredit Darius Prince? Does that discredit like Lonnie Outlaw or Kendrick Ings or Kylie Rashad or a Darian Townsend? No. Or Brandon Fuentes, some of those guys? No. But I do think this year you're going to have a more competitive Ironman, or even Starks out in West Texas. He was there too. He was Defensive Player of the Year last year. So you got a lot of guys out there that can be very competitive for this award. I just think it's Zach Brown because he was second in the voting last year. It's kind of funny how DJ Myers and Zach Brown, DJ played for Carolina last year, and Zach played. You had 2 of the top vote getters on the same team. And I think this year he should be number 1.
I mean, Brown last year was on, and much like Myers, that was a very star-studded roster. I mean, for crying out loud, I know Ings. There actually is a bit of a reveal of the Fayetteville jerseys, but we still only have him in his Cobra jersey from last year. I mean, here's what I've got with Ings. Brown definitely is up there, like without a doubt. We know dude can dominate both sides of the ball. Top rusher last year in the NAL, top for rushing TDs, and also was one of the tops in the linebacking department for the Carolina Cobras and in the NAL itself. Here's my thing with Kendrick Ings and why I'm angling as this might be his year to get this award. So back in his AFL days, was a return man and was a very effective return man. Still is pretty effective at times when he's turned balls in the last few years for whoever he's playing, whether it be, of course, the Cobras, of course, is his main team. I think he's going to be leaned on quite a bit to do a lot for Fayetteville, just based on what the roster has for him in store. You know, he took a bit of a chance. He could have gone back to Carolina. He is with the Cobras. He is now over in Fayetteville, North Carolina, just down the way. And I think Cato's going to lean on him as being the number one target. So I think he's going to be one of the top receivers in this league. But I think he's going to keep up his production as a defensive back last year, the way he was in terms of, he was solid. He actually had some pretty good coverage. But I think the kicker will be that he's going to have even better season as a return man thanks to the arena rules with the Nets. And that's my key. If he becomes one of the top return men, if he's like top 2 in the league and then has that top production as a receiver where he's the main guy over in Fayetteville, to me, he's your Iron Man player of the year, because that to me is an Iron Man. All 3 phases, and you're excelling at all 3. I mean, if you're dominating at all at 2 of the top ones, you're not a return man. Returner will probably take the back seat compared to the other 3. But if Ings is like, say it's like him, Darius Townsend, and like Khalil Rashad are all like neck and neck for return touchdowns this year. And then you have Ings also up there with like the likes of like maybe top 5 in receiving, maybe not touchdowns, but like in receiving, he's just killing it. And then defensively, he shines. That's where I think that comes in. So I think you're going to see that. And as you can see, that first test will be April 8th, this upcoming Saturday. He'll be playing against the Orlando Predators. So that'll be a first good test. But that's my angle, because Fayetteville, I think, is looking for that dude to help them carry. But hey, as I told you, man, I can't count out Zach Brown. We didn't last year, and I'm certainly not going to be a guy telling you there's no way Zach Brown makes, because he will be in that conversation. Without a doubt, he'll be in that conversation. He's proven it too much already in his career. He will definitely be talked about all season in that regard.
Well, speaking of kick returners, offensive player of the year will be a guy that I think both of us think, all 3 of us, it's a mixed bag. Basically, grab a person's name out of a bag and throw it up against the wall, and whoever sticks, it's who's going to win the offensive player of the year. You got Darius Prince. I got Khalil Rashad. Khalil Rashad, he's so dynamic. He's my dark horse in winning the MVP this year.
Ooh.
I meant to say that in the MVP voting, but I still think Darius is going to do it. But if Darius doesn't win the MVP, Khalil does that, and Darius replaces him as the offensive player of the year. Just how they did it this year, basically, with the 2 positions, where the offensive player of the year and the MVP were different positions. I like Khalil Rashad because he single-handedly was a human highlight reel down in San Antonio, and now he gets an upgrade in quarterback, depending on who it is, between Arvell Nelson or Jonathan Bain. Both quarterbacks are a massive upgrade from Robert Kent, so that just makes him more explosive, and you have help along there with Philip Barnett that can give Khalid more of a concentration that he can win. And what Mason mentioned, Darian Townsend, Darius Prince, and Khalil Rashad, you play man on them, they're going to kill you. Those are honestly, this may take off other receivers. Kendrick Ings can be in this conversation as well. But if you add Kendrick Ings, we'll throw in another name in there from go maybe like a Clarence Williams, maybe possibly, or even he's not going to be in the league until week 10 or week 9, and it's Devin Wilson. You throw all those names there, that's your top 5 receivers in the NAL. Period. Darius Prince, Khalil Rashad, Darren Townsend, Devin Wilson, and Kendrick Ings. All those guys can win Offensive Player of the Year. In my opinion, I think Khalil Rashad does, because I think last year we were introduced to him. This year he takes over. It's just the evolution of Khalil Rashad.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the league was put on notice last season when this man got returning touchdowns alone. Dude was a menace as a receiver. Speedster, real quick, can get by defenders and just make himself get open without a doubt. And so they're definitely going to have a challenge for any team playing him this year. As you saw in the graphic there, first challenge will be for the Cobras to contain him on April 8th. But, I mean, it's going to be hard. I definitely... honestly, this 3 choices we have between us 3 is kind of my top 3 if I'm going to say in voting right now. Because, look, if I'm not picking Darius Prince to be MVP, I have him as Offensive Player of the Year. I just don't know how he would not end up in the awards category in some regard, one way or another. So, like, if I didn't put him as MVP, I'm like, okay, I got to put him as my Offensive Player of the Year. Otherwise, Khalil Rashad, oh yeah, definitely. Darian Townsend, as we were hinting at, last year was just his rookie year. That was a man that, came onto the scene and now is what is known as like a guy that he'll be in Jacksonville, and he's going to be, at least on paper, the main guy in Jacksonville this year. if it's Connor Blow or if it's whoever that's going to be throwing his way.
That's
So,
Connor.
yeah, I was going to say you would know, and that's why I'm also hinting is because it's probably Connor because Jason's been talking it up like mad that it's going to be Connor. So, anyway, these three to me, like that's my top three that I would pick in voting, and it's hard for me to choose one of them. I'm just picking Prince because of the fact that he's not my MVP choice, so I just assume he will be probably right up top there. But it would be so hard if it's not Prince and say he's MVP. It would be so hard for me to pick between Rashad and Townsend because both of them are so dynamic, and they're both good returners too. That's what's crazy. Townsend that's another return man in this league that I think will excel with the Nets and the Halo rule. Is he'll be able to be shifty just like Rashad was. Prince also is a solid returner. You can't count him out. Dude does cause damage on that regard, like you were hinting at. So honestly, I don't think there's a wrong answer in this selection. It's just going to really come down to who has the slightly better year and who voters think has better appeal to.
Hopefully this audio gets captured by one of these players and they play it, because I'm going to say a statement. All three of these individuals, all three of them, these guys can take over football games.
Yes.
These are your Michael Jordans, your LeBron Jameses of the league. If you need someone to take over a game, these three individuals can take over a game in your favor because they're dynamic, they're explosive, they have good hands, they're good route runners, and they're good returners. We've seen a lot of last year, these guys get the ball in the end zone, and 5 seconds later, they're dancing in the other end zone because that's how explosive they are. These three individuals, they may even be, honestly, and here's another bold statement, they can be in the top 10 in MVP voting. That's how dynamic these three players are if the key word, if they stay healthy.
Yes. Health is, of course, a massive issue. It's the unpredictable, conundrum of this whole thing. Although, honestly, between these three, credit Prince did play Iron Man a bit last year. I feel like all three of these guys are going to be specialists, so at least they'll have a little bit less wear and tear, you hope, through games. But you never know. Special teams player of the year. And I'll admit, Ings also is in this conversation, I think, which is Jim is picking Kendrick Ings. But as we also hinted now, kind of spoiler alert, me and Mason picked Khalil Rashad, and kind of hard for us to say what can you say about Khalil Rashad being a return man. We've already kind of hinted at that in the offensive player of the year section. But Rashad, once again, in our awards category, which, by the way, players can win multiple awards. So it's not like you're just restricted to like one category. So keep that in mind. But, Jim, Kendrick Ings, as we hinted at, dude's also made a career being an excellent arena return man. I think that's crucial saying arena. Those Nets, they're going to make some new return man faces in this league kind of shine even more than they were in previous seasons.
Well, yeah, he was also, I think he won the Rookie of the Year in the AFL as a returner.
He was up there, yeah.
So he has experience, and we've had him on the Fayetteville episode a couple of weeks ago, and we actually had a conversation about the Nets. And he basically just says, like, once you get used to the bounce, you got to think the rules of the game protect the returner with the kick, getting the ball. But honestly, we how we did the voting, or how we did our selections, it's similar players the last couple of picks so far. But there are other guys out there. I know there's guys out west in West Texas. Like, where's any of our guys? Well, it's early in the season. Like San Antonio last year, we didn't know anybody in San Antonio, and Khalil Rashad. He's been on almost every slide in this graphic. That tells you how fast you can get your name in this league. But for other names, especially in Fayetteville, like they just signed James Summers. For the people in Fayetteville who are Mustang fans, so who's this James Summers guy? He is basically yin and yang from Kendrick Ings. They go hip to hip, basically. Wherever Kendrick Ings goes, James Summers is right there somewhere. You're going to get, with him, you're going to get another specialist that's going to go in there and receive kicks and also play a little bit of the jack linebacker position, which he did a couple times last year against Carolina, by the way, just a side note, that's becoming a rivalry now. It's literally Carolina Fayetteville is either Carolina Cobras 2022 versus Carolina Cobras 2023 in the same arena. So the Carolina Rumble is shaping up to be good, and there's been a lot of rumblings like Fayetteville hasn't been doing a lot of things in the offseason. Well, they are very busy in the transaction. So when you get this podcast, look on the transaction wire, you'll see a lot of players. So they are active. So they're there. But for people out West Texas, there are a couple players out there that I'm looking at. But when we look at specialists, we go to people that besides this list right here, the two guys we have here, I'd like to see a guy like a Brandon Fuentes step up. He was a returner last year. Jenkins was a returner last year down in Orlando. And with Darius Townsend in Jacksonville, we will be a guy return, possibly Solomon. There are other guys out there, of course. We've talked about Darius Prince. We talked about the guys up in Albany. You can throw anybody up there in Albany, and they'll become star. It's kind of same between the last two selections here. And we really get to differential players the next slide when we go defense. But for offense, especially, it's basically if you're not the MVP and you're not the offensive player of the year, you're going to get the vote in as a special teams player. That's how it goes. So if you're in the top 3 in the rankings, you're going to be one of those positions player of the year. So. But yeah, the one thing I love about the specialists, unlike the other leagues in the NAL, special teams is crucial if it's the deuce or it's the return game. And also, I'm surprised we don't have kickers. And freaking Zach here, ladies and gentlemen, in our NFL show, homeboy just loves him some kicking bets. And I'm surprised he doesn't have a kicker in the NAL specialist. So,
you could pick one. I mean, there's a few options. Obviously, we talked about Daniel Justino, of course, being there. Marco Roscoe, give him a full healthy season. I bet he could be in that conversation too. I mean, there's a few options in this league for kickers. I just think that, if we're talking maybe overall points and like exciting plays, ones that I think a lot of voters highlight, I think that's where it's going to be at. So who knows if we see a dude that just is dominating where it's like, it feels like every second or third kickoff, someone's just kicking a deuce, then yeah, maybe we need to start stopping and going, all right, you're scoring points. We need to reevaluate this. So we keep an eye on kickers. Arena's a little different with kicking because it is essential. It is definitely crucial to our style of the sport, especially with the deuce rule. Don't get me wrong, but it's one of those where I think now with returns being incentivized, I think that's where we're leaning on, is the return game being a bigger area of kind of, I think, specialization this year that will excel. So that's all we're dealing with. Okay, defensive player of the year. I'll admit there's definitely one I think that some people are gonna be like, where is Kerry Starks? And we can explain. Give us a moment. So obviously Mason, he picked Marvin Ross, picked his boy there, and completely understandable. Dude is an excellent corner. I picked Brandon Fuentes. I'll explain that one here real quick. I think this man hasn't been talked enough about as how good he was 2 years ago and how he's knocked out of injury early on, to where I think that impacted the Preds massively, especially in their pass department last year, because Josh Jenkins is great, but if you only have Jenkins, you have no one anchoring the other side. That's the hard part, I think, is that you're able to find some more exploits. So that's why I think this man could come back and have a revenge tour. And then Jim, I mean, you can go ahead, but I can understand, Nick Hag, I mean, the dude's motor is there's no question about that man's ferocity and tenacity out there on the football field or on the turf. Gotta say the right terminology.
But here's my reason why I picked Nick is the post-game celebration. He was on stage and he made a comment saying that I don't care about individual awards. I care about the award, which is a trophy.
Mm-hmm.
That just told me, players would tell you this, like they don't care about individual awards. They're lying. Every one of them's lying. They care somehow. And Nick Hag Nick Hag, for me, I think he is on a mission this year. I think he does personally. Yes, Kerry Starks went last year, and Kerry Starks had a hell of a second half of the year, but the consistency of Nick all throughout the year, I thought could have get. I even voted for Nick for Defensive Player of the Year last year, in our player voting. I think he has what it takes this year. And you look at the roster in Albany, I just think he's a defensive leader. He's a captain of the defense up there in Albany, and I think he makes that next step. He wins this individual award. And of course, you said about Brandon Fuentes. When the guy is not injured, he's very, very, very deadly in the back or in secondary. he can disrupt some of the elite receivers, and he plays on some couple offense possessions from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
He single-handedly a couple years ago against the New Jersey Flight. He single-handedly changed the whole entire game. He had 2 pick sixes in back-to-back possessions. He turned
That game alone put me on notice for him
Yeah.
as a top player in this league.
Yeah, because it was. I think it was like it was a low, like it was an arena. It was a low-scoring game for outdoor football. It was like what 8-7 in the third quarter, and he gets back-to-back pick sixes, and all of a sudden, Orlando wins the game by 2 scores. That's when Orlando made a couple of free agent acquisitions with Joe Hillis and O'Brien, and they made that playoff that second half of 2021 into the playoffs. I think they won 3 out of the last 4 to get into the postseasons. But Brandon Fuentes was instrumental in that turnaround for them to get into the playoffs that year. I think they were the 3 seed. I think they went to Columbus that year and lost to Mason and the Columbus Lions in the first round. But of course, as you could tell, Mason loves him some Marvin Ross. Jacksonville did too. The guy was a journeyman. Am I right that Marvin played in Albany last year?
Yes, Marvin did play a little bit for Albany last year. He was on that roster.
So I was right. Okay. I just wanted, I thought I was having like flashback. Did he? Was he? But speaking of Orlando, ladies and gentlemen, Orlando kicks off the season at home, 7:00 Eastern this Saturday against the Fayetteville Mustangs. Sorry, I love that graphic. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I love these. If you're not tuning in the video version, like I said, I love the little animations he's got with these for these new ones. But yeah, go out to Amway. Apparently they got new turf, by the way.
Yes.
More of a. It looks like it's more of like kind of like an AstroTurf mix, which is starting to become a little more popular around the indoor and arena scene. I've noticed. So like, not the same traditional like kind of like wrestle mat. It's more like that material meets like outdoor turf material. It looks like right now.
I think it's more up. It's more cushion. So there's no more. They're trying. I think that field is supposed to design so there's less injuries because underneath an arena field is straight concrete.
Not too much extra cushion for the pushing, if you will put that lightly. Also, something I noticed too, it comes in square patches. You can stack the stuff. I noticed that in the comments. It's not rolls. Like traditionally they come out in rolls. You got to kind of seam them up a little bit with the yard markers. It's squares. Yeah. They have squares for this.
It's just new design.
Mm-hmm.
And also for the Orlando, I think they only have to deal with ice for 1 week. There's still a hockey ring underneath the field. So I think that is going to be very interesting how that field holds up against that. But I think the Solar Bears season I think they were just eliminated in their playoffs in hockey. So the Predators don't have to worry about field conditions. It's kind of strange to think about field conditions and arena. But for Jacksonville's sake, they may have to deal with it for at least a couple of weeks because the Icemen clinch a playoff spot. So, so that arena is going to be cold because they have to keep the ice, frozen underneath the field. For the players, it may be nice. Like you're running up and down the field and you're still being pretty chill because the ice is underneath the field, cooling down the facility. But before we wrap it up, we have one more position. Mason already did it. We're not going, but me and Zach have the same pick. I think we have different opinions about it, but we have the same pick. I'm not being a fanboy here. I didn't pick Jason Gibson. That was Mason because he played for Jason Gibson at Columbus. I understand why. But Zach, why Walls?
Why Herky Walls? So again, I am very bullish on the Preds in terms of who they have brought in alone. I think that you're going to see a jump year over year for the Predators. And usually to me, that usually equates to a lot of times one of the favorites for teams to have their coach become coach of the year is that jump. I mean, the Predators last year, they went from they went from a playoff team to really the basement dweller of the NAL. And I think that you need someone to just come in and revigorate the franchise. Herky seems to have done that so far. He's been really good for the community. He's been a fan favorite. And I think that he's got a lot of good supporting staff around him as well to where he and that player set will get him wins to where if he can get a playoff spot and they look dominant, then I think if they get to the playoffs alone, I think he's coach of the year. Mm-hmm. Like that's my hands down. Because otherwise,
Agreed.
I mean, Fred Shaw, I think, might be in that conversation too, actually. I just think that I think that it's a little bit more of a turnaround that's heavier on the Predator's side than it would be the Gunslinger's side. But I could be wrong. I will say, as we've talked, I think Shaw's in that conversation. Honestly, if Coach Smith or Coach Gunnings, if one of those two teams make the playoffs, I think you instantly have to consider one of those two right away. New teams coming in and having to deal with this level of talent and this level of the sport, that's got to be considered. So I think that those are all options as well. Gibson, I think, can be. It's just that, the Sharks were a playoff team last year. He is kind of like one of the top coaches in the league as it is. I think for Gibson, if he comes out and does what like Mason's predicting, if they go into the playoffs as number one seed and they just run roughshod through the league, then he's my coach of the year. Like that's my tier for him. If he makes the playoffs and they're, just kind of one of those like 3 or 4 seeds, and you see like the Preds up there with them too, or like say another one of the teams I just mentioned, then yeah, I'm going to be choosing somebody else. But Gibson has a shot. I think really for us, like the Sharks, I think we're really anticipating to see how good they are with the other big boys to be in that case. I think logic applies as well for the Gunslingers. If Fred Shaw, like if they run roughshod through the league as well, like him and Jeremy Richardson just annihilate competition, and they are either like right neck and neck with Albany, or they are tops, then you have to consider that. Tom Manas, you can always throw in there too, just recent years. So there's cases. I just think that to me, I value coach of the year as a coach that comes in and makes an instant change impact, like right out of the gate, and just puts guys in the best position possible or turns a team around that quick. I have Herky Walls as my guy, mainly because I'm high on the Preds for this season.
Well, I'm high on it because I think Orlando is that team that starts off terribly beginning of the year, feeds off that home schedule at the end, and gets into the playoffs because I think they're going to get a free agent acquisition halfway through. That's going to change their thing. That's not by sources. That's just me I'm making assumptions. Sure. You look in Jacksonville. I agree with what you said about Jacksonville. Gibson. He has to be the number one seed. He has to win home field advantage and get to the championship game, because when we did our voting, the voting was it was done before the playoffs. So if he's the number one seed, then yes. And then you go look at Albany, because I know Coach Manas listens to this show, and he was from the conversations we have, he was kind of distraught that Straw won the Coach of the Year last year. It's almost like he's in a lose-lose situation up in Albany. He can be the best team in the league and still won't win the Coach of the Year. But I think there is one way that he can win Coach of the Year. That's 14-0. If he goes 14-0 this year, number one seed, he wins the Coach of the Year because his team is undefeated.
I mean, that'd be incredible if that is the case. Yes. That's running roughshod right there for the Albany standard. Is you just win every game. Like that would be insane. But I
guarantee Manas is like all their coaches. I don't care about individual awards. He wants a trophy. If he doesn't win Coach of the Year, he goes, look, I got 3 trophies. Those are my awards. Like that doesn't tell you that I'm the Coach of the Year, because there's only one coach at the end of the year that has a trophy, and that's the coach that's on the winning team. But you look at the other coaches around the league. Again, West Texas, and Fayetteville, those are the question marks. If they get in, yes. Coach Fuller is also one of those coaches where 9 wins may gets him in the conversation type of deal, because he still has a pretty loaded roster. But then the only reason why I like Herky Walls is because I think when he got hired, a lot of people around the league is like, who's this guy? Orlando fans know who he was. He's a Predator through and through. And you can tell the mentality in Orlando is there, because all the players that were on that team last year, the ones that contributed a lot, returned. So they believe in his message. And Orlando just seems like the team. They're going to try and find their quarterback situation. They may not get a free agent acquisition halfway through the year, but I think they do when I do think Walls gets in at the end, as a coach of the year because I think Orlando sneaks into that 4 spot.
I think that's a good point you brought up. Is you see a lot of players, and sure, familiarity with an organization and ownership does help, but I think, being able to kind of go like, look, we had Coach Higgins last year, and we, we had to switch things out. Now we've got, former, arena football great Herky Walls leading our organization, and sure, I mean, player to player, that does help a lot with that relationship, but I think, even with arena being more so about, I'm playing because I'm more local, you still can have options to move other places if you want. Teams can set you up with housing, with, possible occupations, as we've heard. If you need to get relocated, they can help you out. The thing that I think stuck, like you're saying, is that, a lot of these guys, these core players, the ones that you think about with like, that are Orlando players these last 2 years, you're absolutely right. They stuck around. And I think that that's crucial, especially like, to me, like having Lonnie Outlaw come back. And I think you hope to use him more this year, having that much receiving talent come in. There are a lot of guys that bought in this season. And, I think that are guys that are standout names, like I said, we have, Jared Dangerfield going to get another shot. He'll be back. He'll be with Orlando this season. I think Prince Shinola, who was with Orlando previously, who was an underrated talent with them, he's going to be there, and he's still on that roster as well. Having Lonnie Outlaw as a receiver that you hopefully will get more opportunities. That's the thing. And then, of course, that defense we cannot stress enough. Freddie Lloyd Booth is going to be back as well, who was leading the league in sacks until he was knocked out late in the season. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
That dude was a menace and was actually put in for the Defensive Player of the Year voting.
Yeah, he was.
And that was with I think like 3 weeks shy of a full season's work, and he was still one of the tops in sacks in the league. Plus, you got two of the top corners.
The crucial point from last year for Orlando was their injuries.
Exactly.
Injuries. They got the injury bug halfway through the season, and it cost them.
Mm-hmm.
The healthiest teams end up making the playoffs.
Yeah, I definitely. There are options all over the place. You can make case, I think, for all 7 coaches that they can be coach of the year. Obviously, I mean that's in any league, but like Herky, I feel like all the pieces are there to where that Preds jump is there, and a lot of that does stem from them bringing things together as a core group that believes in their mission and in a community that keeps growing back its fandom.
Yes,
and he's going to be key to that, and I think that's why we think he'll be that coach of the year this season.
So, bold predictions.
Bold predictions, this week's bold predictions. I think that you are going to see here's what I've got. I think that the playoff scenario this year for the 4th seed will be 5 teams deep, and that anyone can jump. I think that it'll be close to the point where the 4 could end up being at the end of the season as low as like a 6 or 7 seed. I just think it's going to be that competitive this year. I don't think you're going to have as much of a discrepancy like a Predators team that finishes with, very minuscule wins and is at the basement dweller. I think it's going to be that tight of a season between all 7, and in particular that 4 through 7 section. The final week of the year will be bonkers. That's my bold prediction.
I've never seen them act like that before. Denial can be an ugly thing.
Well, we should go, Mr. Ventura. I've arranged to play.
I'll meet you at the bottom. There's still one more thing I must do before I go.
You heard Ace. Don't deny that you're going to be having to sweat it come the last week of the year in late June. You know it's coming for some of you guys out there. You know it's going to happen.
My bold prediction is 3 teams in the NAL, top 3 teams, will be separated by a half game at the end of the year.
Ooh, okay. Kind of like a reverse setup. I see.
Yes.
I think that's a good case. Again, this is looking like the most competitive season in the league's history that's about to be geared up for. I know we said that kind of last year, but like even more so. Like the more teams you get, the more spread out the top talent becomes because there's more options to go play. So it just feels like there's more chances you're going to see these teams really, I think, take chips out of each other and all the way down until we get that final 4 set up.
Well, last year the playoff field wasn't confirmed until the very last week.
Yeah.
2 years ago, it was confirmed with 2 weeks left in the season.
It's only going to
So-
get more chaotic.
It's chaotic, yeah. Hopefully this year we don't have a Columbus Albany ordeal where the top two teams just pull away from everyone. We did kind of did last year with Carolina and Albany, but the 3 seed Columbus caught fire at the end and shrunk that lead. But hopefully it's very competitive. But like you said earlier, 4 and 7 I think will be separated by a game or so. I think it's going to come down to the very end, and it's going to be based on injuries. Who can stay the healthiest? Not just talent, but stay healthiest. But ladies and gentlemen, that is it of the prediction show. So what's coming up? Well, week 1's coming up. Fayetteville traveling to Orlando on April 8th at 7 p.m. on YouTube. Also, the Jacksonville Sharks are traveling to West Texas to take on the Warbirds on the 8th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central Time. And the game of the week is the Carolina Cobras traveling to San Antonio Gunslingers on the 8th as well, 7 p.m. That we'll be breaking down those games when we finally get all the roster finalizations for week 1 action of the NAL. Then we'll get into it. We're going to have a pick 'em on our Discord. To our people who are on Discord, links in our description. Join now. Just fun games, things. I may actually put money into it. The winner of the pick 'em regular season will get 2 tickets to probably the NAL Championship game, if you want, or something hat shirt or something. Do it for the whole season long. So if you want to be a part of that, join the link in the description. Pick 'ems will be up for grabs. But yes, Zach, 7.5 weeks, bro. Previewing action.
Oh boy.
This Friday we're talking about football, my friend.
Wow. We're gonna talk about the matchups fully.
Matchups
Oh,
are
it's gonna
here.
be good. It's gonna be good.
Season's finally here. By the way, Castronova, I do apologize. That was me just, blasting the thumbnail without, reading. There was supposed to be an N instead for a C, but I do apologize. But then again, he can do that to me the whole time. He's like, oh, you can mess up my name, but I still got the trophy. I have a history of just butchering his name. I do apologize, Castro.
He'll get it down someday. It's okay, Sam.
One thing, I should do one bold prediction. Aren't you right? Donnie should return this year.
Right, you are Donnie. I got it. Oh my God.
And hopefully he doesn't make a comment about how Castro is throwing rocks like he did last year too. So there's some there. If you're new to the arena game, especially in West Texas and Fayetteville, when you're watching the Orlando Predator stream, they're very hilarious. They do interact with the chat, and they do a lot of interesting comments. Like Castro's out there. You know how it's supposed to be Castro's out there throwing dimes like quarterback, but he was saying they're throwing rocks. It was so funny.
We love you guys out there. If you happen to even listen to this show, seriously,
yes,
you make it very entertaining to watch Preds games without a doubt.
You'll see either me and Zach on the chat. We're usually there. And coming up on Friday's podcast, we'll be breaking down 3 games to kick off the season. We already know our season predictions. This is week 1. Join the pick 'em. We'll get that up by the time this podcast release on Wednesday. You'll see there. Just join, free to enter, nothing to just join the Discord, join the community, and we'll do a pick 'em to see who wins it, and whoever wins regular season gets 2 tickets to championship game or playoff game, whatever of your choosing. Also, might have a player on. Don't know yet for certain. It is Carolina and San Antonio. It is their game of the week. They are the Inside the Wall game of the week. So let me. I have so many things. They are the game of the week. Carolina.
There you
go. We'll reach out to possibly some San Antonio players. We'll try to either go after Rashad, maybe Arvell Nelson, seeing that he's a recent follower of our Twitter account. So it'd be pretty cool to talk to him for Friday. So without further ado, the reason why we did 2 shows this week, ladies and gentlemen, is because we didn't want you to stick around for 2.5 hours because Albany fans loved last week's episode because it had Eddie Brown, had Coach Manoss, had a lot of intel, a lot of stuff about Albany, but everyone else in the league didn't because we spent too much time on the Albany Empire. Well, That's the reason why you get 2 episodes this week, ladies and gentlemen. I am Jim Bernier. That's Zach Kallman. Stay tuned. Friday, 10 a.m. Week 1 is finally here. Are you ready?
Yes.
Are you ready for some football?
Covering all your favorite parts of the 50-yard fight. This is the Inside the Walls podcast with Zach Kallman and Jim Bernier.